Superior Drummer Tips and Tricks episode 4. Welcome to another episode of showing you some of creative tips and tricks regarding this amazing software. I think one of my subscribers, again, it was Edu, I think, again, asked me if there's a way to muffle or to dampen some of the drums. Well, basically the answer is no, because when they recorded the drums and they weren't damped or muffled, you kind of like not re-muffle them after that, because it was recorded in a muffled way, or it was not. But of course, Superior Drummer has some functions and some settings you can, where at least can change, manipulate, or change the decay and the sustain of the drum in a creative way, because the software is quite powerful. So the first thing you see, I've highlighted the snare drum, I've soloed the snare channel, I've picked a kind of a loop here. So we concentrate on the snare drum. This is the Ludwig Black Beauty. First of all, what you can do is going to the right side in this envelope section, make sure you check this little light here, that it's shown blue, and you can change the envelope of the snare drum. So let's take a listen when I play the loop again, and it will change the decay and the sustain. This is like controlled by this little dot here. Just have a listen how the song or the sound of that snare and the decay and the sustain will change. You have to find the right settings, of course, depending on your song, depending on the instrument you've chosen. Some of the snares have a lot of ringing, or the instruments, some have not. So it's up to your creativity and your needs regarding the song. It's important to know that changing the settings in this envelope section here will change the setting of the instrument no matter which other move you do. So just to show you what I mean when I, for instance, load the snare sample from the Ambience Farm microphone. So usually this is a big room, and this snare will have a lot of space and time to ring out. So when I now play the groove, I will just like unsolo the snare. So we have just the Ambience Farm going on. So this is kind of normal. So changing the envelope in the construct window, just like any other setting you change here, always like has its influence on the instruments, no matter which further mixing decision you will make. The second opportunity to get control of the sustain of the snare drum is like probably the most musical way, is to choose a Transient Designer, one of my favorites like drum mixing plugins you can use. Not only this within Superior Drummer, there are lots of Transient Designers out there, even for free, really powerful too. A Transient Designer basically is it's working kind of similar like a compressor, meaning to get control of the attack and the sustain of a single instrument. Especially on percussive instruments like drums, where you have like a huge attack, some long sustain, so you can really control those settings. So again, I will solo the snare top, and I will show you just by, of course, decreasing the sustain, what this will affect to the snare drum. Oops. So this is probably the most musical way. Of course, I exaggerate the effect to make it more obvious. You can, of course, change if you just need some of the sustain. Again, decrease some of the attack maybe, and make it vice versa. Yeah. Important to know, every time you use the Transient Designer on particular mixer channel here, this will only affect this particular microphone you use the effect on. So meaning all the settings I change within the Transient Designer on this channel will just affect the microphone that was placed on the snare drum top. So if you want to change some settings, you have to do it on every single channel. And the third way to do is using this fade button here. I've talked about the panning in one of my first videos about the Superior Drummer tips and tricks series. But the fade button has a similar effect. So first, let's have a listen what this does to the sound. So this will determine how fast or how long the sustain gets, and how long like the fade of the individual sound file will get. With this setting, you just not control the single microphone, but every other signal that's running through that microphone. For instance, if you activate the bleeding on the snare top microphone, which I usually do to give it a more natural feeling overall. I don't like those like clean settings. I want my drums to sound like a drum set that was recorded at one time, and not like 15 individual instruments recorded at separate times, which basically happened during the recording of a sample library. But Superior Drummer gives you the option to give that natural feeling back to the recording and the mixing. So I will just decrease the level of the snare drum so that you just hear, go back to the off setting, and you will now hear every other instrument that was recorded on the snare drum. Yeah, so for all the acoustic drummers out there and recording guys ever recorded a drum set, this will sound familiar to you, having the bleeding from the other instruments. Of course, those professional recorded drums have kind of a controlled bleeding function, because the microphones were set in a professional way from professional recording engineers with decent microphones in a multi-million-dollar studio. But anyway, you have the bleeding function, you can use it. If you like it. I usually do this, but of course it depends on you. But I want to show you, when I now decrease or change the fade settings of that channel, you will hear that even the bleeding from that microphone will change. So you can use this function maybe if you want some of the bleeding, but maybe the toms or the cymbals have too much sustain, like a too washy feeling on the microphone. You can like change the setting, but always remember the setting, of course, will affect in this case, the snare drum as well. And lastly, I want to show you, just for the sake of this video and for sake of my own laziness, I will show you, this is the Rock Warehouse, one of the expansions for Superior Drummer. Let's have a quick listen how this sounds by default. So you hear quite similar to the Avatar, the core library, recorded in a really big room in Vancouver, Canada. A really cool sounding kit, but they have a preset that comes along, which is called Tight Rock. And as the name suggests, this is really like tight. So let's have a listen first. And you see, I've just highlighted the snare drum. You see they changed nothing on the envelope section here. Let's go to the mixer. You see, of course, some basic cue moves, but nothing fancy or special. But I wanted to show you this example because they pretty much used the fade function here on the kick drum, the snare drum, on the toms quite heavily. You see on the floor tom too, just 6%, because the floor tom, the big floor tom has, of course, the most like sustain. They changed the pan function on the ambience microphone because the room those samples in that Rock Warehouse were recorded in is quite big, so they changed the setting at least to 50%, not to kill it completely, to have kind of that natural sound feeling as well. And they even changed the panning. You see on the ambience far, they created basically a mono microphone by changing the panning from left to right, right to the middle, to give it a more tight feeling. So again, let's have a listen how this preset sounds. Of course, they used the already muted Ludwig Black Beauty because the snare drum already has kind of a low sustain. But I would just wanted to show you this example, how dramatically you can change the sound of those expansions or those samples, though they were recorded in a really big room, without like fancy moves, fancy or any like tricks, just by using the fade button here. Some slight EQ changes, you can create like of a tight rock sound instead of that huge open big sound that you sometimes need, but sometimes you need kind of a tight feeling, and by using those functions within Superior Drummer you can easily achieve that. So, talking about muffling or dampening the sounds of the samples, I hope you find this one helpful. I think in the next episode I will talk about the room microphones and the power of the room microphones. I'm really looking forward to that series because I simply love room microphones on Superior Drummer. If you have any questions regarding this topic from today, any of the other topics I've talked in my last videos, or any other question regarding Superior Drummer, that you want me to talk about, please leave a comment below. Let me know. I will appreciate every comment. So thanks for watching. See you next time, guys.